We're really privileged to have a representative from the Prime Minister's office today. So before we start, I'm actually going to read a letter which comes to us, a message from the Prime Minister, if I can read it properly. I send my best wishes to everybody attending the launch of the Youth Homelessness Matters Day. The instability and dangers for those in the community who are homeless are acute. Young people experiencing homelessness are especially vulnerable, with abuse, exploitation, health problems and unemployment all too common. The support provided by the Burdekin Association and Yfoundations is often a lifeline for young Australians, and the last defence against life on the streets. This work helps young people in crisis and gets them back on their feet. I congratulate the Burdekin Association and Yfoundations for launching Youth Homelessness Matters Day and for extending a helping hand to those facing hardship. I wish you a successful launch. So I'd like to say thank you to the Prime Minister for the message. And Youth Homelessness Matters Day is actually on the 9th of April in 2 weeks' time. We usually begin with a big number saying how many homeless Australians there are. That's what we've got in Australia at the moment, 150,000 people homeless in Australia. But one of the big drivers for why those people are homeless is the effects of poverty, and also things like affordable housing or any housing is either out of reach or unobtainable for those people. So these homeless people are homeless because of a whole myriad of social and structural problems, not just because they chose to be homeless. They are in that circumstance because of the effects of poverty and because of lack of affordable housing. They wouldn't sort of consider themselves to be homeless. They're just staying at friends' places or they're sleeping out tonight and things. So they don't really identify as being homeless young people. So often, so what I'm saying is that the number's really big, but there's an invisible, larger population of homeless young people in our country as well.
It seems like quite a long time ago now, and I guess I've grown up a lot since then, but I think I wanted to just take a few minutes to share my story with you guys today, because I was experiencing homelessness for about 12 months in total, but there was not one single night that I slept on the streets. There wasn't one moment where I begged for money. I showered every single day, and, give or take a few things, I looked pretty much just like this. And it took a friend knowing about a youth service for me to access the help that I needed. Without that advocate, without that person actually reaching out in for what was probably just a passing conversation for her, actually changed my whole life, because I didn't realise that I was experiencing homelessness. I grew up in Canberra, only child with a single mum, so I lived with my mum and, I guess didn't realise that there were kind of cracks in my upbringing until I went to high school. And I started to go to friends' houses and sort of see that things were different where I'd grown up. And my mum had suffered, I think, from just, a multitude of different things in her life. And, her mental health had really taken a hit because of that. And, not knowing how to deal with it, because my mum didn't have a very good support network. She, was drinking, she was gambling, she was doing all sorts of things, which as a child you don't really comprehend or understand, but in high school I started to get the bigger picture a little bit more. Not knowing how to deal with that, I guess as a 15-year-old, rebelled against it pretty hard. Actually, I made the decision to drop out of school. The main reason wasn't just because I was struggling with work, but because I was sick of being, I guess, a financial burden on my mum. I left home and started staying with someone else, although I wouldn't say that I was experiencing homelessness at that time. I'd fast forward a couple of years later when I decided to move to Sydney, and I moved in with my ex-boyfriend who, things were going really well, and then they kind of just turned to crap because we both had family issues that came to surface. And I kind of found history repeating itself, and I found myself in another situation. It's interesting how when you've grown up being used to a certain type of family member or a certain type of relationship, how you subconsciously kind of look for that, and as a result end up finding, the same abuse, the same kind of dysfunction. And so I ended up fleeing from that home without really thinking things through very well. I thought, I've just got to get out, and I don't really know what my options are. I had one friend in Sydney and I started couch surfing with her. Didn't really know the term couch surfing. I just asked if I could stay on her couch. This was my best friend in Sydney, and I thought that it would be a sure thing, but it wasn't. And I think this is a trap that a lot of young people fall into. There are circumstances way out of your friend or family member's control that even if they want to take you, they might not be able to. And so I ended up getting advice from her that I should go to a place called Oasis in Surrey Hills. And, it seems pretty simple to just go to a service when someone tells you to, but there's a few other things that got in the way for me. The first one was pride. So I don't know about you guys, but when I was growing up, I had a pretty negative image in my mind of what a youth refuge would be like. And there were a whole lot of stigmas attached to it that I didn't really want to be associated with. The second thing was fear. And it was just that fear of not knowing what to expect, having to actually trust people that you don't know when actually your trust has been violated in the past. It's a really hard thing. And so those were the two things I was grappling with, and I changed my mind so many times. Went to the youth service and all the beds were full. But I was lucky enough to secure a bed at a women's refuge just down the road. I'd had a bit of work experience since the Cheesecake Shop. I'd worked at a real estate and a bank, so, quickly updated my resume, started sending things through. I didn't have a job at the time because my partner and I had saved up money, gone backpacking, and then when we came home, that's when the dysfunction kind of really hit the fan for me. And so I was kind of caught in that middle ground. I started applying for jobs at the refuge like crazy, and then the weirdest thing happened. I got a phone call from a future employer saying, "We've had over 100 applications for this job. You've got 5 minutes to sell yourself to me." Okay, here's Sydney for you. So did that, and I honestly cannot remember what I said, but it must have worked because I got a job and it was managing an admin team at a law firm in Town Hall. So I was managing 6 team members, and I was the youngest one, which was weird on its own. But the fact that I was experiencing homelessness was even weirder. On my resume, they required a residential address, so I put the address of the refuge down, and she reads it, and she reads the street name and sees that it's in Sydney and goes, "Oh, renting in the CBD, you must be doing so well for yourself." And I'm thinking, far out, this is pretty crazy. But thus began a bit of a double life. I was experiencing homelessness for about 12 months following on from that, and I worked at the legal firm for about 12 months at the same time. No one in my work found out until I was ready to tell them, so towards the end of my employment. I was staying in different refuges. I was couch surfing, house sitting, and doing all sorts of things. Because I was working, I was eligible for a place in medium-term accommodation, but I had to wait for a bit because the beds were full. And so that was really cool, but it took my own experience, I think, to change my perceptions of youth homelessness. I really believe in Youth Homelessness Matters Day so much for national awareness of this issue, but entire communities' awareness of this issue, not just the ones who are at risk. And so I guess to close, just to give you an example, a status update, the like, share, act, it could come across as, well, what difference is that really going to make? But honestly, that status update, that share, that like, could mean the difference between someone in your newsfeed that's thinking about couch surfing or couch surfing right now. That could mean the difference as to whether they reach out for help or don't. You sending that message is not only raising awareness, but showing someone that you care for them and that there is hope for this issue and that youth homelessness is worth the investment. So I really encourage everyone in this room to get on board with the campaign and spread the word as far as you can. Thank you guys so much.
By asking you, which is everybody in this room and our community, what home means to you, we're asking people to consider how important and influential their home has been in their own lives. Without a stable home, would they still have the opportunities that were afforded to them, or would their life have been very different? How can you, as community members, get involved? So like the campaign on social media and keep up to date with events being organised in and around your neighbourhood. Share information about Youth Homelessness Matters Day, as well as fact sheets and tools on how to assist those in need. Act by participating at an event organised with your local community, by writing to your local MP about the importance of this issue, or by fundraising for your local youth organisation through asking them to donate small change found where homeless young people often sleep. So in the lead up to Youth Homelessness Matters Day, Yfoundations conducted a photo and writing competition in January, whereby young people who entered wrote about what home meant for them. Yfoundations are thrilled to announce that the winner is Jessie Wilcox.
I'm not who I was when I first walked into this building. I entered this building as a sheltered, yet abandoned adolescent, not really knowing how to cook, what to buy, how to enroll in studies, how to keep up with phone correspondence, and many other things people take for granted. I had little idea of how to take proper care of myself. This poverty of skills is a spectre that haunts many young disadvantaged people, especially those experiencing homelessness. I will share with you a piece from my competition entry. Home is a shelter in a storm. Home is an oasis in a desert. Home is a glimpse of the afternoon sun after walking down the mines. Home is a moment of reprieve in a lifetime of worry. Home is the only place where nothing else matters because you are safe. Home is the last bastion of free will. Home does everything that running away couldn't accomplish. It is a sentiment that many find comforting, but questions of community housing deal with more than that. I've spoken much of the home. That is my personal symbolic representation of the place that I live. Many people see youth homelessness as a simple issue, deferring either to total rejection of both our ethical and economic interests in helping our young people, or the presumption that brick and mortar solutions are sufficient, still curiously lacking in an area as privileged as ours. I find it strange that in an area that can find thousands of people to protest the state government's treatment of sharks on the other side of the country, the people see no similar crisis in the lack of provision for housing in our backyard. Without a house, I would be a rough sleeper, one of 6% of our homeless population. Without a home, I would not know the safety of boundaries, nor that my independence was real. But without encouragement, I could not have thought that I deserved any of this, that my interests were worth pursuing, and that my ideas could stand for themselves. I spoke of who I was when I walked in here at the end of 2012. I want to speak a little about who I am today, and how housing, particularly the holistic model, has helped me. Today, I'm the proud wielder of fantastic recipes for chicken paprika and traffic light chili. I'm a student of Ultimo TAFE. I study live sound, recording and vision design. Last year, I emceed the Certificate 2 concert. In coming months, I will be organising band comps with a small events company. This morning, I spoke to local radio about youth homelessness, and less than an hour ago, I was interviewed by the Manly Daily on the same topic. Tonight, I will speak in front of a couple of thousand people at the Sydney Alliance Bridging Assembly about these same topics. Where before I struggled to find myself shelter from the storm, to carve out a space for my survival, today my struggles are to achieve my endeavours. In their fulfillment, there are more celebrants than just me. My story is but one among many. 10,000 young people don't know where they'll be sleeping come next week. To say youth homelessness matters is to say that their struggle matters. To acknowledge this is to change lives innumerably for the better and to take a step in defiance of the tyranny of inaction.